Welcome to Making Room, a podcast inspiring people to accelerate change by being a catalyst, honoring creativity, and acting with courage. We are making room for the greatest potential of our community.
Welcome, you are welcome here. Welcome to this open door, dear. Our hands are reaching out for you. The floor is clear and we've made room for you.
All right, welcome back to Making Room. This is so exciting. We've got Daniel Valdez here. And I know since we're going to talk about welcoming, belonging, communities, but have food and cooking, this can't be any fun for you.
Dream. I've been waiting for the Making Room in the Kitchen episode.
Oh,
so we can get
nice.
creative in the kitchen while talking about all wonderful things, community, culture.
I'm excited to be the first one to doing the kitchen
Yes.
edition. So I'm looking forward to
Love it.
Yeah, we've known each other a long time, so we go way back. You know, you've doing some amazing work leading the Hispanic Federation, Charlotte Pride. The three of us also serve on the Communities and Schools Board of Directors, which his mom is a site coordinator there.
So
I
Really
think
invested. Yep.
community is so central to you, and you know, through the trip we did around building social capital, just the meals we've had over the years, and when we started talking about, you know, making some food and how important food is in culture and food is in bringing people together, I'd love to hear, you know, your shirt says you're welcome here.
Yeah.
You know, how is food for you and in the culture that is meaningful to you? We got to go to the tortilla factory. You've brought me in so many beautiful ways, but what have you seen it do in your life, and why is all of this just so important to you?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of reasons why food is important, but for me at least, it's been a way to stay connected to my roots. I was born in Mexico, but came to the U.S. when I was 3. So I grew up here, and one of the things that I was always really interested in is the food and how it was so different than other people's food when I went to school, right, particularly where I grew up. So I embraced it, right? I sort of went full head on and wanted to learn as much as I can from my mom, from my aunts, from my grandmother. And so, yeah, food has been something that to me just gives me a lot of, when I'm in the kitchen, it's great for stress relief to just cook, to be able to just be in the kitchen and whip something up. I love to have people around the kitchen and have conversations, just have a good time. And again, it's a great way for me to stay connected to something that that I know my parents, in particular my grandparents, grew up with. And it's a way for me to continue to honor them and all the work that they've done to bring us here for a better life. Yeah.
That's great.
And we're going to be making tortillas today.
I
So
love it.
Yes.
I have to ask you really quick because I was thinking when you were talking, I thought back to my grandmother and my mom, and like there's always one dish. It's like that's grandmother's dish. Like that's grandma's dish. So I'm curious for your grandmother, since you mentioned her goes back the furthest. What is that one dish that you remember her by?
Oh God, there's so many. I mean, I think one of the biggest things that I remember about my grandma is she makes these like squash dish that she's like sautés with onions and garlic and tomatoes, lots of oregano and things like that. And so it's very simple food. Yeah. And you should just accompany that with some tortillas, a little cheese, and it's great. It's one of my favorites. It's very comforting for me as well. So yeah, it's one of the things that I always think about.
Home, right?
Yeah.
The home. I want to hear it. I don't know that about y'all. So how about you, Shiv? Let's go around the room.
Yeah, so my grandmother, when I used to go to India and visit her, and then also when she came here to the States, would make this thing for breakfast. It would be matcha, so it's like a spicy lentil, crispy fried thing, and then she would pair it with this mugas, which is like chickpea flour that's roasted with lots of ghee and some sugar, and it paired well together. It's spicy and sweet, and no one to this day has ever made it as good as she has, right? So whenever I see it, whenever I have it, it definitely reminds me of her and of, family dinners and everything together.
Oh, what about you?
So I got a couple. So my grandparents lived in rural South Carolina, and they grew everything on their own. Like they lived on the land they sharecropped. So they had pork, they had everything. One of my grandmothers made this great pork chop that I loved. It was amazing. A lot of soul food. The one thing one of my grandmothers that I always requested wasn't good on the diet, but she made this coconut cake. It was just like amazing.
Coconut.
Yeah, everyone we used to fight over it. Yeah. So those are some things that take me back to better days.
Oh, it is big because that was so important in my house.
Yeah.
Which I think not only my mom's bolognese was just amazing, and she does it a few different ways. But it was one of those that at least for me, I ate too quickly many times. I'd have to lay on the couch. But I just felt food for us growing up was always this, whether it was Thanksgiving, my parents would always say, hey, who doesn't have family in town? And just welcoming people, to your table. And here we are in we'll call it the making room house. But we are, if you're listening to the podcast right now and don't see it on video, we're in the kitchen here, and we're actually, going to get the chance to make some food. But I think
smelling some amazing.
It's smelling great. It
is that we got some mole sauce going.
Love it.
And just that chance, though, I think, Shivani, that's how actually you and I and Padas became really good friends at first. It was really a lot over food.
Absolutely. I think for me as well, right, gathering around a meal, and for me especially, like being able to create that meal is really important, but gathering around food, family as well, is always, family meals are an experience. It's not just about sitting down and eating. It's about what happens at the kitchen table and what conversations happen and what connections happen, not just about the food. It's about that whole experience. And so, definitely when you have that connection, the ability to kind of grow around that is huge.
That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been having a few of my non-Mexican friends over.
Yeah.
I've been slowly introducing them to
Right.
different.
Yeah.
So I made some mole yesterday, and a few of them
That's
came
great.
over. They'd never had it before, and it was interesting to see their reactions to it.
Yeah, I love that. So ethnic food, I feel like it's no better than for someone who really knows it, really cooks it. It's so much different because it's everywhere, but going with someone who can tell you like why and sort of how it's done, and this is really good mole. Like I found this is most rewarding.
Right.
And everyone likes to cook their own way. So that's one of the things I've learned as well. Is I've been visiting families and friends, and we all have a different way of doing our own dishes, and they're all just as valid. I think it's just the story behind it and the way that it brings people together is what's important.
That's right.
Yeah, so I'm going to show y'all my way of making some tortillas.
Ooh, yes, and we'll be very good at inventory reduction.
Exactly.
Professional taste test.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, let's do it. Do you want to get started?
Yeah. What do we have here for people listening?
For tortillas, it's pretty simple. We went and got some masa mix or corn. It's a sort of a corn meal type of thing here. And so that's all you need, and some water. Really mix it up, and then I have a tortilla press here, or a tortilla maker. And so we're gonna press the masa in here once we make the dough, and then we're gonna put it on the stove and cook them. And it's pretty simple and very easy to make.
That's great.
So there's and then one of the things I like about tortillas is that you can use it in so many different ways.
Right.
It could be your spoon or your fork for your food. You can make tacos with it. You can make quesadillas, tostadas, sopes. There's so many ways of using
just
tortillas.
eating it plain.
Dipping it in guacamole.
Dipping it in whatever.
And sending the video of that to Shivani.
Exactly.
Yeah,
She's
not
at
jealous.
work.
Not jealous at all.
You can fry it. You can do all kinds of things to it. So it's a great sort of base for lots of different things. So let's go ahead and start it. We're just going to mix these. Who wants to be my mixer?
That's good.
Shivani, should you do this?
Okay.
So we'll just put the water in here. So it's 2 cups of the flour mix and a cup and 1/4 cup of water in there. But we can add a little bit more depending on the consistency. So you can go ahead and start mixing it around, Shivani. And,
with hands?
Yeah, with your hands.
Look at that.
All good food is made by hand.
You have to
Yeah.
That's a T-shirt.
And we'll see.
What's it feel like? Right now, Shivani is mixing the corn flour in the water.
Nice and mixed. We might need about a little bit more water.
She has great technique.
So a lot of Indian flatbreads, right, are made in a similar way where you mix it together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would that be like naan?
Yeah.
Naan too, but we do like a lot of roti.
Oh yeah, roti is amazing.
Yeah.
It's to be more water because I think it's a little.
Not quite yet because you still haven't been over.
I haven't tasted the
Yeah,
food.
keep coming up.
Well,
we're gonna have to do a podcast.
We'll do it at my
the
house.
household.
yeah,
Yes.
I guess maybe season 2. I guess.
Yeah. I'm big on the build your own parties.
Okay.
So have you cooking as well?
Those are fun.
Love it.
So what was happening? We got a chance to go to Lupita's,
Yeah.
right? And we saw the conveyor belt where they were happening so fresh. What was happening there when we went there? By the way, that's in East Charlotte. We'll put the link out.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so so we moved to North Carolina in 1997, 1998, and so there were no Mexican stores, but except one on Central Avenue, and would come and get it, and the tortillas were packaged, right? And so after the population growth of the Latino population here, we're seeing more and more of these things pop up like tortillerias, basically.
Right.
So where you would go to a bakery to get bread, you would go to a tortilleria to get your tortillas. And so we've seen in East Charlotte and South Charlotte they're popping up. But basically they're making them there fresh every day, so you can just go and buy them, and it comes through a machine. Yeah, it needs a little bit more water, I think.
Look at she's making room for me.
Yeah, she is.
Process.
Yeah, go ahead and finish it off.
Mine's going to make more noise.
Okay. I like it.
So what they were doing there is they were taking the corn, and they basically you soak the corn in lime calcitrate, which is powder, and it breaks down the corn. Then you have to wash it off, of course. It gets really soft, and then they basically just press it through this machine, and it turns into this dough, and then that dough gets put on this conveyor belt, and they make these like really thin tortillas. Exactly.
That's great.
Yeah.
So you mentioned when you first came, though, there wasn't a lot of this
No.
stuff, right?
Yeah.
And that going to school, you also were eating things that were a little bit different. So tell us a little bit more about how that was. Because I feel like, especially amongst friends here, right, there were some that totally rejected their cultures and their food and everything, the language, because it made them feel different, and then others that embraced it and carried forward with old traditions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think that was something that was interesting moving to North Carolina, because when we first moved to the United States, we were in California. It was very different. I went to a school where there was a lot of people that looked like me. There was a lot of folks that spoke Spanish. Right. It was very different. But when I moved here, when I was in middle school, going to middle school, right, and seeing the lunches and people would, people bringing. It was really interesting to see that. But I had grown up with it, and so I always embraced it. But I could definitely see how other folks would be intimidated to bring that into school, right, because it was something different, and people, a lot of times are afraid of things that are different or of change. Right. And so that's something that we saw, and I think throughout my career I've been trying to help people not be afraid of change and not be afraid of things that are different, but asking questions and trying to understand, because I think through that we find that the differences aren't that many, and that the similarities are a lot more, and that those differences actually enrich us all. It makes us all better at relationships, at community building, at our work, and all those things. So to me, it was embracing all of those things. But it was interesting because people didn't know that what I brought, what it was, or they've never seen it before. So it was a way to have conversation. But it was also, and I think a lot of ways, people saw me as different than them, and I did experience that sense of difference when I came to North Carolina in this rural part of the state. Going to a middle school that was very different. People looked very different than what I looked like, and so I experienced that difference. And at least for me, it's not the same for everyone, but at least for me, I sort of went head on into that difference, and I love to advocate on behalf of myself and on anyone else that I saw was being classified as different and therefore being ostracized in some way. So that's sort of where I began my passion for advocacy work, and sort of led me into this nonprofit.
Yeah, that's great. So one of the things we talked about on the show is not just the person who is courageous, but the person who supports that person who is courageous. So I'm just curious, when you're in those environments and you're attacking this head on, is there someone who says, hey, you know what, Daniel? I appreciate what you're doing. Keep doing it. And they may not have had the courage to do it themselves yet, but just supporting you was a way of keeping you going.
Yeah, I mean, I think throughout my career, particularly in nonprofit, where I've met folks that have understood the importance of doing this work, right? There's lots of advocates, here in this room as well. Like when John reached out about, being part of this trip that we went on, right, and how then I can then utilize my social capitals to continue to do the work that I was doing, at the places where I've been. So I think that, there's definitely been lots of people who've supported that work because I think they understand how important it is to do it.
That's great.
Right?
And I think, too, then what you do, and we've talked about this idea of getting more proximate to each other, and that's why we were intentional about using the terms catalyst, courage, and creativity, because as I was out there, getting the tortillas today, I thought I would never know about this place if I didn't know you, right? So my heart, when we talk about diversity and inclusion, we're talking about stuff that's deeper, which is humanity, and honoring that in you, and that it expands me as a person. And I want to bring him on because he's here taking some pictures. Franklin Chacon, can you come up here, Franklin? It's a surprise. Franklin is someone near and dear to all our hearts. Say hello, big man.
Hey,
but if we hadn't had that relationship, I wouldn't have learned the things that I knew knowing Franklin. So we got to know each other through CIS's Difference Makers trips, right? And it was really eye-opening for me. I remember the first time that your last name has an accent over it.
Yeah.
And when I saw on your LinkedIn that he didn't have an accent over Chacon, I said, Franklin, why didn't you have the accent? And he told me about how he's used to trying to blend in, so if he took the accent off, it could maybe feel more American, being a young man from Honduras. And had I not known you and advocate for the things we did related to his last few months, you got us to the right legal things, because immigration is a super complex issue.
Right.
And I just appreciate that, and I know you've been a big part of all of our growth and journey. So we've got tortillas here. How you doing?
And they're on field right now.
They're looking amazing.
So how about for you, when you talk about food, but just making people feel welcome? Why is that important, and what makes you feel welcome?
Like he was saying at the beginning, food for us, and especially in our community, is just something that brings us together.
Mm-hmm.
I still remember, when my grandma would cook for me and stuff like that. The recipes, just some amazing food, and that's just the way that they tell you that they love you.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way of making you feel at home, making like you're comforted and everything. So it's just something special that hits hard, you can say.
And now I want to make sure you got a chance to look at this, because you said you were going to show me. Does this look? What would you do different?
He's a professional. So I would not give my input.
That's great.
What country are you?
Honduras.
Yeah. So I mean, I think Mexico and Central America, our base is the corn, right? And in so many ways we utilize corn in so many dishes, and we all have our versions of tortillas too in Central American
People
countries.
know me, I'm always trying to instigate a little bit.
That's one of the things that it will, it always has to be around the house, like tortillas. It's just like a basic thing that you can grab. Tortillas, rice, beans. That's like the must. Exactly.
That's great.
Yeah, so if you go to any, Hispanic or Latino house, like they need to have tortillas, they need to have beans, they need to have rice.
That's awesome.
Who wants to make the next tortilla? So you all saw how I made it.
I did, yes.
It's pretty easy, pretty simple.
Again, I feel like Shivani has to do the honors here.
Okay,
Show us how it's done.
Wow, I did see that.
That looks amazing.
It's pretty simple, but it's like.
I'm definitely getting the press.
That's right.
All right, so just grab your just a small little ball of dough and then put it in there.
Yes. And now, before Hispanic Federation, you were at Welcoming America, and aren't there things now Welcoming America's doing? Your shirt, as we said earlier, says you're welcome here to use food and just getting people together across communities to learn about each other.
So I work at the Hispanic Federation now. Our role is to help Latino-led and Latino-serving organizations across the country, and I get the honor of doing that here in North Carolina. But before that I was at Welcoming America, which is an organization that works to basically bring people together and help communities be more inclusive for newcomers and for folks that are new to a community. Perfect. Yeah.
Ooh, Shivani, for those of you listening, just nailed it.
We can redo it again.
Maybe grab a little
It looks
more.
good.
John thinks
It looks so
Put a little bit more, a little bit more, and then don't press it too hard.
Yeah.
They're just a bunch of haters.
She's rocking and rolling. Now, Shivani, what are some things, what are some of your favorite, things to make at home?
Franklin, you said you wanted to say.
No, we are giving it to you first.
We are making room at the counter.
I've already had.
You are a guest.
You earned this.
You are a guest, Franklin.
You are a guest.
So my kid's favorite food is okra. Dungeness style. So I've and I guess my mother and mother-in-law will hear this at some point, but my kids actually like my okra better than both of theirs. But to the point where they now are like, you make it because you do it better than yours, which is like a kind of a pride point, right? Because usually your mom's food, you can't beat your mom's food.
Yeah. Feel free to put some mole too if you want, or dip it in.
So I love making that.
I just made it yesterday. So.
Where are you from? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Mexico.
What part?
Acapulco. Guerrero.
Oh my gosh, this looks amazing. And Franklin was hanging here too as a creative with our photographer Camille, who they've been working together on our photos. This is so cool. We got creativity and food and in the
Shivani
kitchen.
just made a really great.
Dang, Shivani, that one is perfect. All right, I'm gonna get in the game.
Yeah.
What do we got in here?
Are you want to make your own? How is it?
Just a small amount. So I'm pulling out.
I'll let you go ahead and do the cooking.
So let me ask you, I'm curious and any of us here, whether it's Daniel or Shivani, Franklin, Brandon, we all come from different cultures and styles. What is, aside from food, what are ways that people have made you feel welcome? How can we be more welcoming? I think to your point, sometimes behind not being welcoming is fear, right? Fear of change. And, it just seems, what have you seen, either someone who's reached out to you, either a person or a gesture or a way that's either honored your culture or just made you feel welcome? And my quick story on that is my mom's best friend growing up, her family was Syrian. And they used to have this family reunion, and every time they invited our whole family. We weren't Syrian, we have a lot of European roots. But you would have no idea that we weren't part of their family reunion. My mom till this day calls herself Situ when she sees my dogs, which is Syrian for grandma. And she's just adopted a lot of different language from her Syrian friends. And I didn't even realize that. I think for me, when you feel like there's not even someone's reaching out, it's just like you're like a part of it. That really hit home for me growing up. So how about y'all?
I think for us, inviting people in has always been really easy and it's fun, and there's a lot of our culture, right? There's the food, there's the music and the dancing and all of that to bring people into all those experiences is really fun. But I think from learning about somebody else's culture, asking questions is always so great. Right? But not in the the way that you are. I think there's an intention to how you ask questions, right? A true interest in wanting to learn versus kind of hearing and not understanding the differences. John just pulled off.
All right, me at the camera in the kitchen. Oh no.
Folded it.
I got a little cocky.
Yeah. I think we lost our ball.
Sorry.
Brandon.
Yeah.
It's my turn. All right.
Yeah,
Brandon in there.
I've helped by pre-making balls now.
Oh yeah, he helped me out.
Yeah, so people really welcoming, and I think in our great
what
friendship.
What you want to do is put it off center.
Okay.
Oh, you got to put that in.
I like it.
And then press, but not too hard on it. And then you're gonna once you
Not
press,
too hard,
you're gonna
man.
spin
Take
it
it
around
easy.
and do the other thing.
Take it easy.
So press, but not too hard.
Look at Brandon is now making the corn tortilla. But when you talked about the interest,
That's good.
I have a Airbnb rental over here, and had I not known you guys, there was a couple who was here, and knowing you all, it's part of Indian culture, is to take your shoes off when you come in.
Mm-hmm.
So this couple was here, and they were really upset that the floor was cold. And it was like 30 degrees, and my mind at first was like, what do you want me to do? It's 30 degrees, right? And then I looked at their profile and could tell probably by the name in the picture that they were of Indian descent. And so it occurred to me that they weren't able to, I thought of y'all, and I said, I bet their feet are cold because their feet are on bare concrete floor. So I asked them, would it be helpful to go get some rugs at Target? And I remember it just took that moment to pause, but that to me, knowing you and your culture allowed me to honor the value of humanity, because I was getting ready to pop off and send a message and, hey, it was 30 degrees last night. But instead, that understanding around culture and practice allowed me to say, this is not them trying to be annoying or picky.
Right.
This is actually a cultural thing that it takes me 5 minutes to run to Target and get a $20 rug.
Right.
So thank you for that.
Thank you for sharing.
So you guys becoming a pro at this. So
Yeah,
I'm just gonna keep going.
Yeah.
You said I had to make, what's my quota? 40 tortillas?
Yeah.
This is the best one so far. Okay?
I'm just saying.
It's true. I just warmed
No,
up.
I
have
can't
to-
find it.
Oh, look at that.
So I will say,
that is nice.
yeah, you're welcome. I had a little bit of extra coaching from Daniel, but I will tell you this.
Wow, I saw that happen.
My daughter is a very picky eater, but she does like tortillas. She will eat the tortillas by herself. So I make grilled. I make quesadillas and like just all kinds of variations with the tortilla for her. So
I love it.
I have some experience on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's gonna be jealous that I'm making this.
You guys
without
got the
her.
big green egg.
Oh yeah. No, I love grilling. So.
Here, Shavana, your tortilla is ready.
Oh,
You want
ready.
some mole or some
All right,
I'm
Francis,
excited.
what's on your menu? Like, you have to cook a dish right now. Like, what's going to be on?
I don't have a dish. I mean, he's already done most of the work, I can say. I actually thought you were making quesadillas, at the beginning, looking at the cheese, and then I did not know that you had mole. Amazing.
I'm getting it on that.
Right?
Yeah.
Wait, are you making an English muffin or a tortilla?
Don't worry, I've got my.
That looks like an English muffin.
Yeah. Practicing.
That's not a tortilla.
Just be patient.
That's so good. Well, and then you talked a lot too, Daniel, about being an advocate, and I think about that in your work with Charlotte Pride as well. But you were telling me a story of being age 12 and selected into a class that wasn't appropriate for you, and it's sort of, look at that. See, mine has character.
It does have character.
For our listeners, mine's a little not perfectly round. Thank you. It has a lot of character.
All right.
But you talked about, what has inspired your own courage to be a voice for people, and why ever since I've known you, you've done that for so many different communities and people who might not come as natural.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of different experiences that I've had in life where I've sort of been thinking back on it, right? I saw myself as an advocate, even though that's not what I was thinking when I was doing that, right? And I think that when I go out and talk to community about advocacy, I always tell them advocacy can look as just having one-on-one conversations with someone about a particular issue, or it could look like telling folks about what you believe, right, or defending yourself, particularly if you're being discriminated against. So I remember when I was 12, I was walking with some friends in the morning, and we were talking in Spanish, and there was just a handful of us that were Latino who spoke Spanish, and we were talking in Spanish, and I remember someone behind me who was the head cheerleader said, this is America, we don't speak Spanish, we only speak English here, and someone that I went to school for history, I love history, and so I was very much snarky. I looked back to her and I said, well, the U.S. doesn't have an official language last time I checked, and I can do whatever I want. And I went to the teacher, and I went to my social studies teacher, and she got called into the principal's office, that kind of thing. But that was something that a lot of folks wouldn't have said anything back, right? And same thing with ESL class. When I first got to middle school, they put me in an ESL class. And I could run laps around most of the folks when it came to writing and speaking English. But because I was Latino, because I was brown, I was put into all,
just by default.
By default, right? Wow. And I had to convince them that I didn't need ESL, that I would actually much rather use that time to go to other classes, right? And so, but there were other people who were fine with ESL because it was an easy A. It was an easy way to get into class because you already spoke English, but they put you in there. And so a lot of my friends who also had grown up here since they were very little and who knew English very well, they were in those ESL classes. But I didn't want to do it, and so I think it, challenging, the administration and the school system was a way for me to self-advocate, and I think that that's something that I've carried through. Looking back on it now, there were moments where I did that, but that's why we're trying to create these more inclusive communities with school systems, with local governments, right, to help them understand that just because someone is brown doesn't mean that they just go automatically into the ESL class, right? How do we do those kinds of things?
What I hear you saying is look at the individual.
Exactly.
Right? And that's what we talk a lot about.
Exactly.
What have been some of your processes that you've used to kind of create that welcoming space in places like schools?
Yeah, I mean, so in the past with the Welcoming America, there were opportunities for us to speak with, superintendents across the country or with city governments or elected school board officials, those kinds of things that have helped us think about how can schools be more inclusive for newcomers, particularly in places like the South where we've seen the Latino community, the immigrant community in general just grow tremendously, and so there hasn't been a lot of that infrastructure that has kept up.
I'm looking for room on the skillet.
Yeah.
You're going to have to get a bigger
making
one.
room on the skillet.
Yeah, there's one right there.
Actually, my kid started kindergarten last year, and I think within a week we got a phone call, and it was very much in English of like, hello, may I speak to you, blah, 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 and then they were asking if we needed ESL. I was like, no, actually, we're good. But it's interesting that you started this whole conversation in English and asked me questions in English when I probably, I might have not been able to speak it.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. And it's definitely important to have those kinds of programs for folks that need it, but it's also understanding the nuances and how that translates to the individual, right? And it's about like the individual person.
Yeah. Exactly. We've talked a lot about it, as things happened in this past year of just creating access around testing for COVID or getting vaccines or getting treatment and accessing remote school. Like there's a different nuance and it's not just direct translation and saying turn this English word into Spanish and everybody will get it.
Yeah,
there's a cultural nuance to that as well.
And speaking of schools too, you talked about a little bit of my work with Charlotte Pride too. Like I wish we had like a GSA or a queer group in school when I was growing up, but that's not a thing, and it's still not a thing in a lot of schools. But we've seen that grow tremendously, and I think that's one of the ways that we can continue to be inclusive is to really think about how we show up for people in those spaces. When you think about bathroom signage at a business, to asking people their pronouns and respecting their pronouns, those kinds of things are ways that I think we can continue to be more inclusive for different communities.
Although especially I think with understanding and language, like language around pronouns, what different words mean, having you as a resource sometimes to ask questions, right, is super. But also, I think we've talked about this in inclusion world is like there's going to be like mistakes that happen, and I think because we're here in the kitchen, we also can know like, hey, there's some curiosity. However, there's things I would say as a white male, I've got to take the onus to learn, right, and that we've got to get away from this dominant, there's the way it is, especially around language. And I speak a little Spanish. Hace 8 años que yo estudio español. But the next part, I'd love for you all to just be able to talk a little bit in Spanish, and for our audience to have an experience, if you don't speak Spanish, to just have that feeling of not being in the non-dominant language. So I think it's important y'all chat a little bit in Spanish, and I may pipe in a little bit and practice. But maybe tell if somebody doesn't speak English who's watching this, like what are we doing here? What would you say?
Estamos haciendo tortillas. mexicanas, porque hay tortillas de diferentes países. Pero estamos haciendo tortillas, algo muy simple. Traje un poco de queso, tenemos mole que hice ayer, tenemos guacamole que compró John esta mañana.
Queso.
Sí, estamos hablando de la importancia de la comida y cómo puede traer, ¿no?, a diferentes comunidades juntas y usarlo, ¿no?, como una manera de ser más acogedor, de tener conversaciones con las personas acerca de las diferencias que existen de culturas, sociedades.
¿Y tú, Franklin?
Yo solo estoy aquí para aprender un poco. Creo de que estar en un lugar con personas de tantas nacionalidades, aprendes un poquito. You kind of pick up, certain things from, people from different nationalities. Entonces es muy interesante poder ver la manera que él cocina. It's important to see, the way that he cooks and, how he does it. It may be different from me. Tal vez sea diferente de como yo cocino. Pero, es bueno aprender de mucho.
That's great.
And we are... Yo aprendo mucho. Franklin helped me. If you probably didn't see it.
Yes, it looks a lot better.
It looks a lot better. Well, he was, helping.
Yeah.
Daniel's still going to help you a little bit.
User error. So this is John. I am now in front of the tortilla press.
That's good.
Is that too much?
That's good.
And so earlier, mine got a little out of character form. So Franklin showed me that I needed to flip it a little bit.
Because if you pull it, it's going to rip. So what I do and what I learned is basically you pick it up, from this, and then you just put it into her hand, or you can take it to the comal, and whenever you're done.
¿Qué dice eso?
Comal.
Comal.
Nice.
I learned that it's an Arabic word, I believe, or kitchen, I think, or family, one of the two, but not sure.
It's amazing how languages merge like that, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of similarities.
Yeah. I went to a nonprofit in Nashville that basically they have a big industrial kitchen where they help immigrant folks get their license to be able to sell food, to do catering, those kinds of things, and the name of the project is called Comal, but with a K, which is that Arabic spelling of it, but also that connection of the Comal to a lot of the Latino communities, which is the cooking and stuff like that. So it's interesting the way that they mix.
So we were talking. What I really love about food and just the food of different cultures, it really tells a history. And so we were just talking about. I have a friend who's Haitian who made doubles for us, and it was amazing. And Shivani told me some of the Indian influence that were based on migration.
Right.
And so it's funny, and we have some of the same stuff in African American culture, where it's based on where folks came from and what they brought with them. And so I just think that's a really cool aspect of food, that you're
you can
eating
start to,
history.
Fusion of cultures, and there's a
That's
history
right.
to where even the ingredients come from and the spices come from.
So I got to say, Franklin just pulled something out of the hat here. He tell us what you did, Franklin. But I'm excited about this one. I'm going to claim this tortilla.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna derail. It's a pupusa. I tried making it myself. I'm still not a pro. It's a Salvadoran dish. But we also cook it, in Honduras. Basically, it's the exact same thing as the quesadilla. But in a quesadilla, you cook the tortilla first, and then you put the cheese, and kind of just fold it. But with the pupusa, basically you stuff it with cheese. Yeah. And, it cooks like that.
All right.
Yes.
So
my children actually love pupusa. So my kid's recent birthday, we did pupusa.
I'm going to try it.
Oh, look at that. He's trying some new stuff out here.
Yeah, I love it.
Yes.
So there's cheese inside of this one. I just put it in.
Ooh.
And then you just fold.
Sorry. No, you okay with cheese? A little bit. Well, I think as we're got tortillas firing up. I'm getting hungry. It's probably almost time to eat. I'm curious, today, and I'd love to hear from everyone as we close out. Is, what gives you hope? There's a lot of different things going on in our world right now. A lot of negative things, a lot of unwelcoming behaviors. We've seen it in many different ways politically and in our communities, but what continues to inspire? And Daniel, why don't we give you the last word? So just because we're in order here, I'll start with Brandon just took a bite. So we'll go with Shivani first.
Yeah.
What gives you hope for more welcoming communities?
I think that there is a lot of spaces where things are negative and there's not dialogue, but there's also a lot of people that are out there advocating and speaking aloud, and other people that are standing next to them and allowing them to speak and creating spaces for them. That if enough people are speaking this out loud and saying we need to be more welcoming and thinking about it from intentional, even from policies and procedures to language and how you might navigate a classroom versus a business or, from my perspective, a clinic, really thinking and being very thoughtful about those approaches. If enough people are doing that, I feel like there is momentum, there is hope for a better method of doing things, right? And people are listening. I think the right people are listening and the right people are at the table, and if they're not there, we're going to make room for them.
That's right. Making room, get in the kitchen. That's the important thing.
Yes. We'll just start all meetings with meals, right?
Yeah.
All the encounters with here.
That's great.
Taste the culture first.
That's great. Yeah, I would build on that and just say what's exciting to me, again, just connections and commonalities over different cultures, over different backgrounds, different experiences. And I think the more that you said it, John, get proximate, the more that we get to know each other and put away like labels necessarily, but just say, hey, this is a person. Daniel was a great guy who we met and taught me how to make tortillas. Doesn't matter all the other stuff that's out there. That's what we bonded over, and that's how we grow from here. And just the appreciation of, oh, man, well, Daniel's culture does it like this. Shivani's culture does it like this. My culture does it like this. What if we marry them together? There's just so much that you can build off each other. And I think we need to take the time to really appreciate what it is we have in common and the nuances that we have that's different, and how can we bring that together to make something that's amazing, even with Franklin just bringing something new into the mix that we did not plan. So that's what I'm very hopeful about.
I can definitely say humanity. We have talked a lot about that, and it just takes one single person to make a change. Sometimes we try to go for the biggest thing, and I'm not saying that that's not the way to go. Definitely, if you have the means and if you can't do it, go ahead. But sometimes it just takes one teacher, takes one single person. Definitely for me, it was John. He mentioned a little bit about what happened with the legal issues. And I can tell you that, one thing that I do remember when, everything was going on is that this man literally offered to drive me from where I was at all the way to Honduras. So, that definitely, it was really powerful to see, someone doing that for you. Right. So that definitely gives me hope in humanity. I have hope that, he's doing amazing, great things.
That's great.
Well, that means a lot. I don't know really what to say other than I knew how important you are to this community and anywhere you step foot, is that you're a presence. You create space for people to be their best. You did that for me. And you were right. It is sometimes change is one person at a time.
That's right.
And when we learned about the story about the accent mark on your name, I was working with a local bank and I was going to pay a check to you, and the bank software did not allow them to put an accent mark. And I politely sent them a message to say, can you please update your software, because I don't want to have to pay this young man again without fully spelling his name. And so that interaction, but in a loving way, right? I wasn't posting it on social media just saying, hey, if you really want to honor humanity, this is an opportunity for you to do that. So I think what I've gotten from you is that of all the things you've been through, you respond with, this is amazing. Yeah. And you have impacted so many lives, Franklin, that your journey and your life is the message. Your character is the message. Your humanity is the message. And I get inspired every time we're around, and I'm just glad you're here. And Daniel, you get the last word today.
I'm always hopeful and inspired by the newer generations, the young folks that are, but I see them, right? I see them having conversations. I have a 6, a 7, and a 13-year-old nephews, niece, right? And just hearing them have conversations, just hearing them say the things that they say, and just being okay with things that maybe 20, 30 years ago people weren't okay with, right? And they don't see it as weird or different. It's just what it is, right? And I think that's my hope, that technology has made this world a smaller place and connected people in such a way that hopefully will continue to create future generations of just more inclusive and open-minded folks. And whatever we can do now to encourage those young folks to continue that path is what I want my work to be about.
That's great.
That's amazing. Well, what an incredible, more in the kitchen coming soon, right?
I love it.
It's time to eat. So thanks for being with us.
We invite you to continue making room with us. You'll find this episode and all of our exciting and meaningful conversations on Apple, Spotify, or really anywhere you choose to listen to podcasts.
Join the Making Room movement and get more info at makingroomwithus.com or follow us on Instagram at makingroomwithus.
Thank you for showing up for us and each other. Until next time.
You are wonderful and full of truth, just as you are. You are wonderful, so full of truth, just as you are. Oh. You are wonderful, so full of truth, just as you are, just as you are. You're welcome here, just as you are.